Yo, let's talk about recognition and respect. While I feast, the label's picking up the check. Then I leave to catch myself. The audience never... Yo. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Recognition and Respect with your boy SHNEAKY. Got my guest right here, Steven Martinez, with a PH. I was trying to Google you earlier and I couldn't find you. Now I know why. I was using the VEN.
It's all good.
Yeah, man. So let's just kick it off, get it started. I'm going to ask you the same question I ask all my guests. Who are you and what do you do? And you could be as literal or metaphorical or symbolic as you want.
Hey, so what's up, everyone? My name is Steven Martinez, a.k.a. the Mega Man from the Mega Man's Podcast. I have a podcast that features comedians, podcasters, inspiration people, celebrities, athletes, people with small businesses, breweries, and some just people who are making a difference in this world.
Dope, yeah. And actually, I think it's have we ever met before, like in person, in real life? No, right?
No, but I think one of your friends follow me.
Yeah, we actually have a lot of friends in common, is what I'm noticing. I was going through your episodes and seeing who some of your guests were, and also social media and stuff. And I think this is actually the first time I've ever had a podcaster on my show.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because usually, I do like artists and bands and entrepreneurs, and maybe they have a podcast on the side, or they've been on a lot of podcasts or help out with a podcast or like host one, but they're not strictly a podcaster, So this is kind of a new experience right here.
Yeah. The reason why a lot of us podcasters, we got to get our name out there. Sometimes in a way, there's some podcasters are kind of stuck in the pond, and you need to get out of that pond and you need to do other people's podcasts to build your network and to get your name out there. Whatever, here in Cali, Minnesota, Washington, or all over the world,
No, yeah, definitely. And that's, so I'm coming at podcasting from the other direction. Like, I'm an entertainer, and I listened to your show, and I had never seen it expressed that way, like informative versus entertainer, like two different types of podcasts. I never really thought of it that way. So I'm more of an entertainer, and I have an event company, and so I try to use my podcast to promote the artists that I'm working with, or the entrepreneurs that I'm involved with that I've met through entertainment industry or friends of friends. And so I think it was either the end of last year or early this year, right before this hit, that I had actually tweeted, or maybe I had said it, that I wanted to get more podcasters on my show because I felt like they are the new form of entertainment, and they are like kind of the future of entertainment. And there are a lot of cool independent folks in my neighborhood, my area, like this Southeast LA. I know you're in Long Beach, but we'll get to that. And then and I'm trying to promote like all the folks, and so I want to have more podcasters on. And ironically, Eddie was supposed to be my first guest, but we never clicked up. And then I heard why on yours, and so you're the first. So welcome, and thank you for being here. And
it's an honor. Thank you, really, thank you so much. And for me doing a podcast, there was a person named Ramon from Chicano Shuffle, and I heard a podcast with him with No Father, No Problem, where he wanted to try to get a lot of Latino podcasts to kind of be there for each other as a family instead of being like crabs in a bucket, where if one Latino podcast is doing good, we got to bring him down and stuff like that. So what I'm trying to do is trying to do a lot of people's podcasts and try to network and try to get both our names out there where it's not about me, it's about both of us,
Yeah, and I think it really shows, especially because like as I was going through your guests, it's like so-and-so from this podcast, so-and-so from this podcast, so-and-so from this brewery. And it's really about highlighting what they're doing and how long they've been doing it. And so you've been your first episode goes back to October 2018. So this would be like
actually September 28th. There was 3 episodes that you don't see. They're kind of missing because At the time, I put some music out, and for copyright reasons, they took out my episodes. So I'm missing
Mm,
3 episodes.
got it.
So like yeah, so September 28th, that was the first time I started doing a podcast, and I've been doing podcasts for about maybe what, a year and 7 months.
Well, it's like almost about to be 2 years coming up soon, right?
Yeah.
September, October is going to be here before you know it.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
what was the inspiration to start it? And like, I haven't listened to all of them. I didn't do the deep dive
Uh,
that I would have
yeah.
hoped. But from what I've heard, there's definitely been like an evolution from how it started and kind of what it is now. And like you've even said in your own words, more maturity, more growth, you know.
Yeah.
So what kicked off
Mhm.
the beginning of the podcast, and like what has it kind of become now?
So let's go back. So where everyone should know about who was the first person to start doing podcasts, it wasn't really Joe Rogan. It's actually Adam Curry. Adam Curry was a VJ on MTV. So when Adam Curry started doing a podcast, and it trickled down back in the day on the websites with Tom Green, he was doing it, and that's where Joe Rogan went to Tom Green's house and saw the inventions of Tom Green, what was doing, and with the idea of what Joe Rogan saw with Tom Green, that's where he started doing the JRE podcast. So it's going to trickle down. So when JRE started doing the podcast with Brian Redband, I was listening to them since day one. And when Brian left and had Jamie on, there was a lot of people I was just binging on. So one episode, uh, Joe Rogan invited his comedian friend George Perez from the George Perez podcast. They were in with the Def Squad, in comedy stores and all that. So Joe Rogan likes to push a lot of people to do podcasts to get your name right out there in the network. So when George wrote Joe Rogan and told George Perez, hey, you should do a podcast, and he's like, I don't know, I should do it. And at the time, George Perez he was funny. I just liked him. So a couple weeks later, George Perez started the George Perez stories, and I started binging at hearing all his episodes. He had, at the time, I didn't even know who Felipe Esparza was. I did not know who Martin Moreno was. There was a lot of people who invited on, and I was tagging them, going to comedy shows, until one day, George Perez DM'd me on my Instagram, say, hey man, what are you doing on a Monday? He says, nothing. So I want you to be on my 50th episode as the best fan, because you've been showing me so much love and everything.
Oh, that's dope.
So that was actually my first podcast I ever done on the George Perez. You can look it up on the 50th episode. So I was kind of nervous and everything, and getting to the podcast. Then a couple weeks later, famous comedian Martin Rizzo from the podcast called Squad by the Bell. At the time he was on touring, his lady DM'd me and told me, hey, my boyfriend wants you to be on the podcast. Are you down? I says, yeah, I'll do it. So I think he came back from tour, and I did his podcast called Squad by the Bell. It's on it. You'll find it. And after that, I have to give credit to Martin Rizzo, because he was the one who actually got me to the podcast game. I did it by Anchor. And at the time, when he showed me for 2 days, I was trying to do whatever I can to play around with Anchor and try to do the podcast. What was my format? I was really in the baby stages. And my first episode, it was an intro, but I messed it up. It was an intro and an episode one put together, but it was only for 35 minutes. And it was like crappy. I didn't like it. But a lot of people were pushing me to do podcasts, like George Perez, Cy Getty. Then all of a sudden, I've been following Felipe Esparza from the What's Up Food podcast. He does it with Rodrigo Torres and his wife, Lisa. And that's when everything just blew up from there, where Felipe Esparza on live on YouTube. Shout outs to fucking Mega Man from the Mega Man's podcast. He's fucking do it. Follow him. And 2 days later, I have 100 messages. People were listening to my episode, and I was like, what the fuck do I do? It's like, it's shitty. I was in the beginning doing from the podcast till now, I've been dealing with pressure. So ever since then, I've been trying to, in the beginning, putting like a whole bunch of episodes out, but they were kind of crappy. So I didn't want people to know me as Mega Man. I want people to know me as Steven Martinez. So what I did is, to start over to the podcast, I wanted to talk about my story from when I was little till now, and the journey that I've been through, and so people can understand about Mega Man. And ever since then, it's been a ride. Um, I had I've been my first celebrity guest I ever had was Tanya Estrada. Then my second guest is Tony A. the Wizard. Tony A. the Wizard has a humongous podcast called Rhodium Radio, and he just reached over close to 2 million people who listen to it or whatsoever.
Wait, what's it
And
called?
Rhodium Radio podcast.
What? How do you spell that?
Rhodium, like that Rhodium over there in Gardena, where the movies you watch them, like the swap meet. Rhodium Radio podcast.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you kind of had like, you already had like people paying attention and watching, so it must have been a little bit more stressful about the quality and the content and what you're trying to do and all that.
Yeah, because I had a lot of connections. I knew a lot of famous people and stuff, and you know, it's pressure because you want to make that episode like it's your fucking last, and if you're gonna make a good episode, you got to make it the good, and it was a lot of pressure, Ryan, and I learned from it, and I was getting MC Pancho. I got Martin Moreno on the podcast. I had a lot of famous comedians or podcasters. It's just a whole bunch, and I love it. And a lot of people say, you just got to keep on grinding on the podcast. And I didn't find my rhythm until I reached about 80 to maybe the 95th episode where I started finding my format. But it takes a while to see. And, I always tell people, like, don't do one podcast episode once a week. Try to venture off and try to do other people's podcasts and do live, small ones, big ones, whatsoever, because it's all about the reps where you could take that jitterness and that nervousness out and you could be open and very more comfortable on the mic,
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's like anything that has to do with public speaking or interviews or being in front of people, like the more reps, right? Comedy, being in a band, whatever it is, like performance anxiety, like it's all about practice. And I mean, you never really get over it. Like even me, I've rocked hundreds of shows in front of lots of people, and every time it's butterflies, and that it's like that. What used to be anxiety, I've learned to turn into like energy and like positive, like oh, this is gonna be fun type shit. But it's definitely a journey to like jump over that. Be very open and be able to just talk and know people are listening and not have it trip you up.
Oh yeah, and to me, doing the podcast, it's 5 times harder because I've been trying to deal with it for the past 26 years because I have a huge stuttering problem. You might hear it from time to time, but I have to go to school for it. I have to watch videos. I have to hear tapes and audio and stuff.
Honestly, I would never have known. Did not. Yeah, no, that's incredible.
Yeah, and it's really hard. And at the time, like you say, anxiety, I was going through that stuff too. I was dealing with depression. I was very shy. I didn't want to learn how to talk to people. I was antisocial. And because of doing this podcast, Ryan, I learned so much, and it made me have a lot of friends. It made me speak a lot. It made me socialize. It made me see a lot of points of views of what's going on in society. And also from doing other people's podcasts, it made me understand a lot of people's personalities.
Actually, I wanted to touch on that because I felt like, and again, I did like a very shallow dive on your episodes, and I was kind of like jumping around just trying to hear the tone and the pace and the topics, and it seemed like some of the early ones were more about like venting and almost like a form of therapy, like talk therapy, right? Where you're just kind of getting out your history, your ideas, your feelings, kind of you're being introspective and kind of contemplating like, hey, alpha females, and this is the shit that was happening when I was a child, and like you're kind of like working through issues, right? So did you find it therapeutic in that way?
Yes, I did. A lot of people say go see a counselor and this, but for us doing podcasts, we're venting. We have to let our frustrations out. We have to take off the monkey on our back. And I remember Joey Cocodillas one time, he said, Mega Man, fuck about your numbers. You be you. Even Felipe, even Martin, a lot of people, you be you. Because people will know if you're faking the funk. People will know if your shit's not real. People will know if like you're just putting a mask on and you're just being a character. So ever since then and until now, I always been me, and I want to be very honest. I'm very compassionate. I have a heart. I keep it real. And just everything because I'm just me for me, and I think a lot of people like me because I just call it how it is.
It's funny you bring up that word character because you recently had like a little rant about how someone left you a bad review and they said it's just you're just a character, and you kind of mentioned a couple words that I wrote down that kind of stuck out to me. You're saying the podcast game. So that's one thing that I'm like, okay, what's the podcast game? Because I don't podcast like podcasters, even though so what's the podcast game? And then you're talking about podcasts are not easy and you have to have a thick skin, and that a lot of people liked you for the drama, but you grew out of the drama. So what did you expand on that a little bit? Because I'm curious about how all of that, like, what were you addressing and what does it mean?
So there's topics like that. So let's start with the podcast game. So when you hear a lot of people's podcasts, they go from Joe Rogan, Fighter and the Kid, Adam Carolla, Mike Catherwood from Loveline and all that stuff. You're hearing a lot of people's podcasts and stuff. And what you're doing is you're getting knowledge from a lot, and you have to do what you have to do to involve and be up to date because I don't watch TV that much. So my CNN is podcasts. So I listen to about 90 to maybe over 100, not to be exaggerating, a lot of episodes and stuff like that to see what's out there, because of this quarantine. I want to see if there's different types of podcasts in LA, Florida, New York, and everything. So, you have to be up to par with everything of what's going on in society today. And for me saying like, you got to have thick skin is like, if people who are going to jump into the podcast game, think about it for a month. And the reason why is because if you're going to jump into the podcast game, you're putting your life out there. You're putting your life, and people want to know so-and-so. Let's say if who is Ryan all about, when he's not doing podcasts, and that's why you have to let people know who you are, and you have to have super thick skin because you're going to have a lot of people who are going to love you. People are going to hate you. People are going to troll you. And a lot of people love the love, but they're not used to getting criticized or having a bad review or a comment, and they just kills their whole fucking week. So when you hear that episode where a person who left a bad review saying that this guy is a liar, this guy's a character, he listens to Joe Rogan, the Fighter Kid, and he repeats whatever he says on his podcast, that's false. Because I listen to so much, and the reason why people get miscorrect because on my podcast or on my personal page, I listen to a lot of people's podcasts and I post it up on my stories because I need to know what's been going on. So that's something to me like I don't want to do where I'm plagiarizing or I'm copying someone and repeating it like that because when you're doing podcasts, you have to be very original, and doing the podcast is very, very hard because you have to come up with the information. You have to come up with the topics and stuff, the guests here and there, the flow and this, how's it gonna come out. So there's a lot of things that people don't know behind the scenes when you're doing a podcast.
So, okay, that's a lot to unpack right there. First off, though, I mean, I'm one of those people, right? Like, I started listening to Rogan in the early days, and to me, it was kind of like, well, he's just hanging out with his friends, and they're all talking, and it just so happens his friends are interesting people, right? That's kind of how, and so that's kind of my idea of podcasting in the beginning was like, I have a bunch of friends. I think we're interesting. We do cool shit. We're musicians. We're tattoo artists. We run venues, whatever. Why not just talk? But I do listen to a lot of podcasts, and I do repeat a lot of shit that I say on podcasts, but I do always try to give it credit. I'll be like, oh, I heard this on Rogan, or I was listening to Sam Harris the other day, and he mentioned this thing, or I got this from I didn't read the study. I heard it from a doctor who was on a fucking radio lab, you know? So I try to give
Yes.
credit where credit's due so people can go and hear it themselves and find, their own information. But a lot of,
But people don't but people don't like that. People want originalness. People don't like, well, you have to be original. Why you always talk about other people's podcasts and not yours and stuff like that. So there's a lot of listeners. You're gonna like a lot of people, a lot of listeners, like the hardcore listeners, they know, but the new ones, they're kind of like,
well, and
what's going on?
I think that's why, and I think that's, I guess, that's why you're interesting in your own lane because, like I said, a lot of people who do podcasts, they do other shit, and their podcast is kind of to promote their other stuff, right? Like people who
Hmm.
write books or psychologists, doctors, comedians, actors, whoever the fuck, sports people, but they have their own thing already that they're either trying to push, promote, get famous for, get paid for, and then the podcast is kind of like a supplement. What you're talking about is like people who like they want to the podcast is the thing they do, and that's what they're trying to push and promote. So where do they
Hmm.
get this outside content? It's like from their life and from the shit they're listening to and the movies they're watching, and right, like that's what pop culture and life, right? That's kind of what you're talking about, right? The Mega Man lifestyle, like craft beers and dive bars and going to comedy shows, and like this is who I am and this is the shit that I talk about and this is what my podcast is about.
Hmm.
So people are going to find like you're like a reporter kind of your own life, so you're going to have to cite the sources of the shit that you're absorbing, right? So I don't understand how people can not
Yeah.
understand that, but it's
Yeah. It's just like, when I'm not doing podcasts, sometimes you have to put your life out there, but I only put about maybe 10% on my Instagram, and then 90% is my private. So I give them a little taste of what I'm not doing, like with my family, doing this or whatsoever. But there's other podcasts who, if they're not working, their side hustle, they're just doing podcasts just to be relevant. But for me, I'm doing it full time because I have a full time job, and I'm doing full time podcasting. And I want to I don't know if you heard about this, but by my goal by 2023 or 2024 is to be invited on the Joe Rogan's podcast. And when a lot of people when they heard about that's my goal, a lot of people make fun of me, or a lot of people mock me and stuff like that, because like that's not going to happen. You're never going to make it, like that movie Dewey Cox. You're never going to make it, and shit. And I don't really care about that, because I'm like that horse that has the blinds where you just focus on one direction. And I just want to fulfill my goal, because that's been my ultimate dream, to be on the Joe Rogan's podcast, and just to get my name out there. And sometimes in a way, like, I do take my podcast seriously, and I do work on my weaknesses to see what I'm doing wrong and how am I going to evolve, how am I going to network, how am I going to boost my numbers, the YouTube channel and this, whatever, and to do other people's podcasts, to get my name out there where, a lot of people will recognize who Mega Man is and be like, oh shit, he's like, he just kept on grinding, he kept on grinding, and look where Mega Man's at now. He's on the Joe Rogan's podcast.
well, that's kind of, and that's, I mean, to me, that's one of the most interesting things about us, like connecting and doing this conversation, is because
Hmm.
we have a lot of friends in common, and I see you met a lot of the spots that you mentioned, like in your dive bars or whatever, is like those are places that I've hung out or I go, or my friends live in those areas, or like indie. I'm over here. I have the indie cup. You talk to La Borracha. Like I DJ
Yeah,
there.
that's my.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I had that. She was on my podcast.
Yeah, so I mean, and I DJ there, so I know her. And then you had like Fix. He says he is funny. He's like, I'm a rapper on the side, but I know him through hip hop and music and all that. So it's just like, it just feels like we would have been in the same places, or we obviously have the same
Yeah.
friends. So I mean, it's cool to bring you on and let people know, and like, because it's like, why do I not know this person? Why have I not been on their podcast? And I think, like you said, it's about going out there and networking and meeting people and like a genuine push to like, I want to help you get on the Joe Rogan podcast. You know what I mean? Like, I'll make sure to cut that clip that you just said that, and I'll tag that fool on Twitter. You know what I mean? Like, we could try to make that shit happen. Like, dude, I support that. Like, why not? I mean, a lot of artists and creatives and people, comedians, I'm pretty sure, I'll just speak for myself, but I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. I'm pretty sure, like, you know, you've had daydreams about like what you would say to Rogan, or like what questions he would ask, or why you would get there, right? You know, like, and it's just like it's a lot of people's dreams, and you're just one of the brave ones to say it out loud and to try to actually manifest it. Because I bet a bunch of people are like, oh yeah, I want to be on Rogan too, but they would never say it or like actually try to hustle and go get it, and like that's just the difference. And I applaud you, bro, and that's dope.
Thank you. And you know, like, to me, it's like this all happened because I was asleep one day and I had a dream like I was on the Rogan's podcast, and then when I woke up, it felt so real. And ever since then, it's like I had this a hunger of like doing podcasts, trying to get my name out there, doing whatever I can to, you know, because I know like George Perez was on the Joe Rogan's podcast, Felipe, Joey Cocotillas, and all that. And I'm just, like I said, I'm just so hungry right now of doing other people's podcasts, doing YouTubes and this, and trying to get the right guests, because before this COVID happened, I had a humongous, a whole bunch of guests coming on the podcast for 2020, and I was going to blow it up. So with the transition, which I'm not used to, is doing Zoom and Skype. This is all new to me. So it's an adjustment, you know, and everything. And also I'm saving up money to get my home base, to have my own studio. And so when I want to get the bigger guest on the podcast, you know, or like if you come on, you know, and everything and stuff like that, I would have my own spot, my own space to do the podcast where, you know, just they can just be themselves, you know. And
no, yeah, and it feels more legit and professional, and like it's like it's a safe space, you know, and it has all the vibes, and you're not worried about background noises or having to be in someone's house or their garage or whatever, you know. And hey, dude, that's tight. I had another question for you though, because I want to talk about where you come from. Because like I said, we have a lot of friends in common. A lot of them are like Southeast LA cats, and I know you currently live in Long Beach, but you had said that you were trying to like move to Downey. So are you originally from this area, or like how do you know like Alan and Super Audio Network Dre? Like, how do you know all these Southeast LA cats? Or like, is it just through podcasting and comedy and shit, or beer? Or...
So what happened was, I live in Long Beach, but I was born in Long Beach, but I lived in Wilmington, California. Then I moved to Carson and moved back to Long Beach. Now, the reason why I want to move to Downey, because that's like the Mexican Beverly Hills, and you know, there's a lot of parking. There's a lot of parking spaces, and my dream is I'm saving up money because I just want to move out of Long Beach and move to a nicer area, Downey and stuff, and at the same time have a bigger condo or house and have a podcast studio. Now with Fix and all those guys, you know, I knew them because they've been following the podcast and everything. And I met so many good people. And like right now, I want to give a shout outs to Borders X in the city of Bells. Yeah. So when
I'm an investor there. Did you know that?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I also, I'm like, I'm a consultant for them, and I help them on events and marketing campaigns and stuff. So.
Yeah. So my good friend, my best friend over there, he works over there, Lewis, Preston's Brewery.
Oh, you know Lewis.
Yeah, Lewis. I had him on my podcast.
Did y'all go to school together by any chance?
No. Okay, so what happened was I was in a club called SoCal Cerveceros, and what I was doing
that's Ricky's club, right?
Ricky's club, but so I was there for a minute, but things didn't work out. But what happened at the time, I was trying to put 50 episodes of this craft beer episodes where it comes to home brewers, people who are making a difference in the craft beer scene and business and all that. And I wanted Lewis from Preston's Brewery to come on the podcast because I give a lot of credit to Lewis because he's really good at making good, delicious beers, and he's a home brewer. And so we just kicked it off. And ever since then, like Lewis, he brewed his own beer at Borders X at my baby shower. I saw him a couple of days ago, like last week, get his beers, and we connect on Instagram. We keep in touch. We hang out, and we just talk about beers and stuff, and we smoke out. So Lewis, and I think it is his assistant too, Alan. But I don't know if he's not there no more. But I hang out with them. They're super good guys, and ever since then, I connected Lewis to Fix from Super Audio Network, and Lewis from Preston's Brewery was invited on the VIP podcast. And so, because what happened is we did a podcast with me and Fix at Borders X upstairs, and so ever since then, we just kicked it off. And a lot of Super Audio Network people, they show me nothing but love. Probably the whole crew.
They're all love over there. I've been like on so many episodes, on so many different podcasts right there with Dre at the Super Audio Network, and it's always the same shit. It's all about support and love, and I feel like that's kind of one of the things that you and Eddie touched on is like really trying to build like a podcasting community, right? Of like Latino, people of color, the Avengers of podcasting, and like I think that shit's tight because it's, I mean, for lack of a better comparison, it's kind of like our own little Death Squad type shit, right? Like, and that's dope, dude. And I think it's like a new thing that I'm getting into, and obviously because I'm not like a hardcore podcaster. If anything, the only reason why I picked podcasting back up is because all my live shows and tours and venues and everything that I used to do performative wise is like closed down right now.
Yes.
And this is still a way that I can use my following, my platform, my gear, my knowledge of sound and video and shit to kind of still try to bring things for the people and try to promote folks, and that way when we all get out of here we have more followers and more content and all this shit. So I like a lot of parallels, and I think that's tight, and so I just want to commend you for that, and I hope you keep doing that shit. And was that always the plan, or is that one of those things that just kind of popped up recently as you notice more and more people are doing podcasts and shit?
So what happened was, like I said, with Chicano Shuffle planted that seed, and what happened was it asked the fellas, they did a picture, the same thing I did with Which Latino Podcast, but they had their own version. So a lot of people, I want to say this, I want to get this out of the way. There was a lot of podcasts, Latino podcasts, and he said to me, Mega Man, what about my podcast? How come my podcast was not on that theme? The iPad, which I posted, was very limited. So I want to do another picture like that, Which Latino Podcast you're listening to, but these podcasters are the up and coming. Like you should be on the lookout for these episodes. So I'm in the works of doing something like that. But the Avengers we are talking about, shout outs to Chris for the Kickback Podcast. He was trying to connect because there was a lot of Latino podcasts who didn't know each other, and we wanted to connect and be there. And connect, and maybe they have a guest or they have ideas, and we're just trying to help each other out instead of pulling each other down. And it's been going good. And ever since I posted that picture of Which Latino Podcast with my version, who I'm listening to, everything just spread out like wildfire. I just want to say there is a good fucking podcast coming out of Minnesota called Pura Cultura Podcast. It's called For the Culture. That podcast is fucking blown up, man.
I'm sorry, I'm writing that down. Did you say Pura
Cultura? Pura Cultura.
Pura Cultura. Is that why
it's
like Buddha, like Buddhist?
No, it's capital, like B as in pet, URA Cultura, like CULTURA podcast. I'll tag you on it.
All right, for sure. And it's funny you say that. You mentioned Minnesota earlier, and I guess that's why you dropped that little hint, is that it's one of the things that you're trying to build up. And you had mentioned like getting outside of California and outside of your region, and have a podcast after this one actually in a couple hours with someone from the East Coast. So I'm on that same tip, and I'm trying to it's like everybody's trying to adapt right now with the COVID shit, and like there's not
Yes.
a lot of things that people can do. So I'm glad that I happened to have a podcasting platform, even if it was dormant for a while, and that I've been told
Yeah.
I'm told I'm a good conversationalist and I'm good questions and I'm good at this. So it's really been a
Hmm.
blessing, man. So what?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was no, go for it. Go for no. You go for it.
Well, I was actually just gonna ask you about like how much time do you put into research and stuff? Because lately I've noticed the later episodes are like really like facts and politics and a lot of notes, and there's like a lot of research heavy driven kind of topics. And how much time do you put onto that? And like, I mean, that's one of the beauties of me having guests is I try to just like really, I let the guests talk about whatever they want to talk about. So.
Yeah.
How much how much time do you dedicate to that, and like how many different sources, and like just tell people a little bit about your research, because you want them to know that they can trust the information and that you've done your reading, and that you're actually like looking into different sources and shit.
So back then, I was not doing the research. I was talking stupid shit or just being a goofy fuck. But when maturity comes into play, when your podcast gets bigger and bigger, now that I have my laptop and the research and all that stuff. So for me having a guest on or this, I like to have my notes down and I have to cover all my facts and everything to make sure. And as my backup is my laptop. So when you say I, I'm a full timer. I'm a full time podcaster. So I'm doing podcasts every day. From being a guest on, getting my future guests, getting all the right stuff I'm going to talk about, and also doing a podcast, doing it tomorrow. It's a constant grind, because I have to be up to par and I have to be current of what's going on in society or what's going on in the world with this COVID and this. So I have to be very current with with a lot of stuff that's been going on. So with this is very new to me because I'm more of an interviewer, but now doing the research, doing this and stuff like that, and keeping people up to par. So when people hear our podcast, our episodes have to be very recent, like it's a day or two ago. But because if you do all your research and you put episode out and it's already been 3 months ago,
It's irrelevant
the
at that
listeners,
point.
yeah, you have to be irrelevant. So if the listeners here is like, Mega Man, that was fucking 3 months ago. That's old. Like have new shit, because a lot of my audience, a lot of my people, they'll call me out on my bullshit. They'll call me out. They call me out. They'll be like, dude, can you have something more current? Because that was 2 months ago.
Damn, yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of the beauty of the way I'm doing it right now, is because I think the longest lag time since the new setup and I brought everything in house is like a week. Like that's the longest it goes. But realistically,
But
like,
you're doing it.
yeah,
But you're doing it.
yeah. But it
I was
definitely is
gonna.
work though. I mean, people don't realize like how much time, and especially if you don't have the best of equipment and you're piecemealing like audio and matching it to video, or like you're just a straight audio, it's there's a lot of complications. The first episodes back in the COVID weren't the best, but I think I've definitely upped the level as we've gone along.
And you see, like with me, like with you, you have your laptop and your microphone. I'm doing everything on my iPad, on my iPhone. I just hook up my microphone and just boom, let's do a podcast. So me getting a new laptop, and a month ago, I just opened a savings account for in my bank for the podcast. So I'm putting a lot of more money into my podcast savings account because once I have my home base, I'll get the equipment and all that. But also, I want to learn the technical stuff behind the scenes of what you're doing, like the video, the YouTube, and this and all that, because I don't want to be left behind. And so I have to evolve and to be caught up on current stuff and be caught up on stuff now,
No, I
from this
feel that,
COVID.
and it's like it's going even faster. I mean, like that's one of the reasons why I'm even live right now. And if you're
Hmm.
tuning in live, I'm not monitoring the chat. Like I'm not looking at if you're commenting and stuff. I'll comment back, and we'll repost all this later. But I mean, I feel like right now live is where it's at. And for folks who are just
Yes.
home, they're just scrolling. Maybe they want to see this conversation, and they're just on their couch and they're just tuned in while they're doing whatever. So just trying to do it for that reason live. And obviously when we post it on YouTube and all the podcast apps and all that is like, that's for the podcast folks.
Yeah.
But you say you're a full-time podcaster and you're a full-time worker. So let's transition into a little bit like you're essential worker. You have a family. You have been essential since the beginning. So you know, work has kind of did disrupt podcast flow a little bit. But you also did mention that there are beer sponsors, and I don't hear any ads on your show, so I don't know if you have advertisements or whatnot, but do you get any income from podcasting, or is that full-time work, something just like a labor of love, just a passion for an ultimate goal, or is there compensation? Like, how does that work out?
Okay, so with being an essential worker, I work about 50 to 60 hours, at a grocery store. And when I come home, I spend time with my kids. They're still at homeschool, and I'm doing podcasts. When it comes to sponsors, I'm always looking for sponsors. But right now, I'm getting sponsors from California Heights Market. Give me free beers and this or whatsoever for the guests or whatsoever. I build a lot of connections. I have to keep it very confidential with certain breweries, but I get a lot of free beers. They give to me to try out here and there. A lot of beers where right now my refrigerator is almost empty, but I'm going to get a whole bunch of beers, hopefully probably tomorrow, if not Wednesday. And because I'm in the craft beer scene, a lot of people know the name Mega Man for the Mega Man's podcast. And so a lot of home brewers, they always DM me, hey, Mega Man, can you try out my beers? What do you think about it? Stuff. So a lot of home brewers send me a lot of beers. I get a lot of breweries from on the East Coast or whatever. They hear the name because I'm affiliated with a lot of the well-known craft beer people, because I'm very close to Edgar, Beer Thug Life. A lot of the brewery people in Long Beach, like Preston's, like Indie Brewery. There's a lot of well-known people because I've been giving so much love. And because of them and their followers, they DM me and say, hey, man, I want you to try my beers. What do you think of it? So they'll ship they'll ship me boxes of beers and I would try them out and see what's up. And maybe they'll say, hey, I'll give you some extra beers or stickers or shirts, whatever. And I just want you to just, show me love and shit like that. But if the beer tastes like shit, I will let them know your beer tastes like shit. If your beer is good, it's good, but it's just, to be honest, I only ever since I've been doing the podcast, I tried one shitty beer, but it's out of Florida, but that was the only one. But a lot of the breweries I get the beers on, I mean, they're fire. They're fucking fire, man.
So what are you drinking right now? I know it's a Border X beer, but what is it? The Pepino?
So what I did, so when Lewis was over there, he mixed in it's a Viva Hops Double IPA. It's pretty good. He didn't put it's an 8%, 8.2% APV. Nice. It's pretty good, and I have a lot of beers. I have a lot of barrel-aged beers.
I have another question because I know you did this in one of your shows. Do you have any beers of the week? Anything you want people to pick up from the store, or anything that they should try?
Well, beer of the week is actually it's already sold out. It was sold out last week. So the beer of the week is Same Game. Same Game is a collaboration with King's Brewery, where you had the collaboration with Beer Zombie, you had Beer Thug Life, you had Unfiltered Brew, you had Kings, you had Hop Squad, and you had Dope and Dank, my boy Shouts of Theo from Crowns and Hops.
They all collaborated on one beer?
One beer.
Wow.
And it's a guava, raspberry, poisonberry, vanilla, marshmallow beer. And it's very thick, too, and it'll fuck you up. It's 8%. And when you look at it, it looks like a slushy, like raspberry, like slushy, but it's fucking fire.
Well, damn. Is it vegan?
I don't know.
You should ask, because that's my only issue with craft beer sometimes, is because like they use like lactose for the sours, or sometimes they have some kind of yogurt based processed shit. So I gotta be careful
Mhm.
because my stomach will like turn a little bit.
Yeah. So that's the beer of the week, and my friend, shouts to J.R. Alexander from SGV Canshare, because I was too busy. He went to Indie Brewery and got me that Skittles beer from Indie Brewery. It said it tastes like Skittles candy.
I think I'm not sure if I tasted it,
The
but
taste the rainbow, or taste the indie, or something like that.
yeah, I'm not sure. I think I would have remembered that one. The last time I was at Indy actually was like my last gig. It was March 14th for their St. Patrick's Day. I was DJing that, and so
Oh, I got their St. Patrick's beer. I still have one can left of La Borocha on the face of the LA women. That
yeah.
that
She's
that's
like
a good shit right
she's
there.
like low key famous, huh? Like
Hmm. I know she is and stuff, and she's super cool. She's super nice.
So, I mean, you've covered some of your like big goals, right? Like you got Joe Rogan is definitely something that you're working up to. You did have like a calendar kind of fall apart of guests. So are you planning to stack up guests? Are you still not Zoom, Spotify? You're still not. I mean, not Spotify. Skype. You're still not Zoom Skyping yet. Is that the
I'm
next
gonna
stage?
That's gonna be the next stage and everything, because like I said, once tomorrow, for the next I have 3 days. I have 3 days off, so I'm gonna be taking care of some personal things, but also on the podcast. So I have Krista and Olivia from Fat Ass Podcast coming on. I have comedian Alpha Robles coming on soon. I have Crowns and Hops coming on. I have Todd from Beer Advocate. Now, Todd from Beer Advocate is a person who grades your brewery and your beer. So he's like the Yelps of craft beers.
Oh, dope.
And
Has he done ratings on breweries that we know?
oh
Like
yeah,
like
oh
like
yeah, yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. He does ratings like that. He'll rate, if you look up Beer Advocate. He does all the ratings of like of all fucking beers, and everything. So if you want to try this beer, who'll grade it and all that. So shout outs to Todd from Beer Advocate, because we're gonna do a collab with him and Edgar from Beer Thug Life. There's a lot of comedians I'm gonna get on. There's a lot of inspiration people. There's a lot of people who are making a difference in Long Beach. And my goal, hopefully by the end of 2020, is to get Felipe Esparza, and hopefully, cross my fingers, hopefully, if I could try to get Brandon Shaw from the Fight of the Kid on the podcast. I will be making a trip to do a podcast with Podcast Dave. Excuse me. He's a producer of the podcast called The Weigh In, with which he does it with Josh Thompson and John McCarthy. Josh Thompson was the Strikeforce lightweight champion, and he was the first person to knock out Nate Diaz in the UFC. So now he's a commentator for Bellator. I'm trying to be in the works of trying to get Brian Ortega from the UFC, Aaron Marquis from Bellator, Shea Cotton. Shea Cotton was the first phenom basketball before Kobe, before LeBron. And, there's just a lot of good people I want to get on the podcast, because I want their stories to be told. And, I always been curious about a lot of people, ex-athletes and podcasts or celebrities here. But, you have to take the podcast one day at a time, and one episode one day at a time as well.
and so we talked about it kind of like we kind of breezed over it, right? Like you coming into the podcast having this kind of like built-in audience already, and the pressure of trying to deliver for them.
Uh-huh.
How like in recent times, like has your audience grown, and do you see more love than hate, and have you seen like, yeah, like have you been able to like deliver what the people who kind of put you on and were pressuring you to do a podcast? Do you think you've been delivering on that and like actually holding it down?
Um, I've been delivering on it. It's just like, maturity wise, there was a lot of people who unfollow me or don't listen to it because, back then because they liked a lot of the cheese mayo, the drama and all that. And I just grew out of it and matured because that's what we always do. We just mature and we just get better in life. And I just see new perspectives, and the I just want to get like the right people to come on the podcast. Um, Honestly, I really don't care about the numbers. On Instagram, they think like, oh, this person has. Well, to me, I have over 3,500. I don't care about numbers. I just care about putting the. I just care about putting the best episode I can do where you'll love it. You hear the episode, it gets through your day. I get so much love on the podcast. People repost. You got the hardcores and all that stuff, and I'm just doing it for fun. At the time I was going through so much pressure, and I didn't know if I wanted to do a podcast anymore. There was times, Ryan, I wanted to quit at 20 episodes or 40 or 50. I didn't really expect you to be doing podcasts till now, and I'm almost at 200. And I didn't tell you this. In 11 months, 10 to 11 months, I was the one who did the most fastest episodes because I put out 100 episodes in 11 months. That's the most fastest, where if you put out an episode of 100 episodes, that usually takes you about 2 to 3 years.
Right, because there's 52 weeks-ish, 52, right, 53, something like that, 51,
Yeah.
53 weeks in a year. So, yeah, that means you're putting out ones a day or multiple a week, right?
Yeah, in the beginning of the stages, because being to the podcast community, I didn't know you should be putting out one episode a week. I was putting out 4 episodes a week.
Oh, shit.
And I didn't know, but now I know the rhythm. So,
you were doing the same thing, right? Like it goes back. Like you didn't want them to get outdated, so you couldn't stack them up. If you did 4 in a week, you couldn't wait to release them like in a month or whatever, because then the stuff that you're talking about is kind of like not relevant anymore, or the guests.
Oh no! Oh no! I just did it back then. I didn't have a structure. I would just put it out because I was fuck it, just gonna put it out. But now I know what days to put them out, because when you get a lot of podcasters and you get a lot of celebrities who, like Joey Diaz, he always tells me, hey, put your episode out on Sunday. And I was like, why? Because he tells me, motherfucker, because that's when your Monday fucking starts. Because at the time before this COVID, people are commuting, people are working overnights, people are working in offices and all that. So put it out Sunday afternoon or Sunday night and let it just ride through the whole fucking week,
That makes sense.
Or Tuesdays and Thursdays and stuff. Tuesdays and Thursdays are the most busiest people are listening to the podcast. It just really depends on the wave of your algorithm,
analytics, right? Yeah, and how what your crowd is doing and where they're at and whatever. Because I recently joined a podcast network. I mean, it's nothing like serious, but they just have like, they're more trying to be podcasters for podcasting's sake, where they have like a Podbean, and they're looking at analytics and they're trying to like do stuff, and they were like, yo, try to post it at 6 a.m. because that's how you catch people who are going to work and shit, or you get people during the day, like. So yeah, it's like it's based on data and who you're targeting and what they're up to, right? But right now I feel like the algorithms are all fucked up. Like everybody's online all the time, or they're just not. Like no one knows anymore. Like I feel like sometimes my Instagram pictures will do really well, and other times where they don't, or like videos that I'm posting up usually would hit certain numbers, and they're not consistent as they used to be. It's pretty interesting.
I took a humongous hit from this COVID. I was averaging close to maybe 14 to maybe 1,300 listens per episode, and it dropped big time to, instead of 14 to 1,300 listens, it dropped all the way to fucking 500.
Wow. And that's just because people weren't listening to podcasts anymore. They were watching Netflix. They were home. They were they weren't. They didn't have all that dead time. They had a homeschool or.
So a lot of people are not. Maybe a lot of people are not working right now. They're not listening to podcasts. But people listen to podcasts because either they're commuting, they're driving, they're going to work, they're in offices, and ever since a lot of people got laid off and stuff, I feel like there's been a huge deficit of people not listening to podcasts. So now that everyone's trying to do YouTube and Zoom and Skype and IGTV, IG stories, we're just trying to get our name out there, trying to be more relevant. So
Google
to
just
me,
created a hangout video chat thing. They're trying to do their own thing to
yeah,
compete with Zoom. Like, yo, you just use your Google, use your
Facebook
Gmail.
too.
Yeah, like everybody watch parties, house party, new apps that are coming up for people to like watch
Yeah.
shit together. It
Hmm.
really is a whole new world out there, man. So it's
Yeah, because it like with this quarantine now it's going to be extended till maybe July or August. Now it's like, well, fuck. It's like if my numbers are going to drop more, I just have to evolve, and I think in a way it's a good thing that we have to evolve because that gives us more experience. Because when shit hits the fan like this ever again, we're already prepared. For us podcasters, we're already prepared for this.
no, and that's the thing. Like a lot of the stuff that I'm doing now was stuff that I had already thought about doing before, but it wasn't worth it, or I didn't know if I was going to put as much time into it as would be necessary to justify that kind of investment in gear and floor space and all that. But
Yeah.
when a pandemic hits, your numbers and your calculations and everything kind of changes. And
Yeah.
people, yeah. I actually had a question for you
I
though,
heard.
because I know. Oh, go ahead. No,
What's up, brother?
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I when I heard your episode in the morning, you did season 2, episode 5, which is the recent one. I noticed that with you, you were kind of worried about a lot of things. Where how's this podcast gonna go? My numbers and this, whatever. I'll be honest. When you heard that episode, when you were talking about a lot of that stuff, it made me think and reflect. I like I was in your shoes, and I was worried about what am I going to do and this, and for some kind of reason, you just got to keep on grinding, man. You got to keep on hustling, and you just can't think about negativity. You can't think about putting yourself down, be like, well, I don't have I'm not working, not doing this, like I don't know how the podcast going and stuff. Just don't give up, man. Just keep on grinding, man. You got to keep on grinding. And there was a lot of times, like I said, I'll say it again. There was times I wanted to quit, man, but I'm still here because a lot of people who listen, man. There's a lot of people who give a fuck about us, and you just got to keep on hustling because you never know who's going to hear your episode.
No,
You
you're
never know.
you're right. You're right. And yeah, like I heard you had some of the same experiences where just like someone will randomly be like, "Oh yeah, you're the guy from that podcast," or "I heard this episode," and you're just like,
Mhm.
"What the fuck? You're listening to my shit?" That's like, all right, that's cool, like kind of awkward,
Yeah.
but like they're like, "Hey, you still podcasting?" And I was like, "Not really," but I mean, we're bringing it back though. So my question for you though was, I saw on Twitter today that Newsom was talking about uh, hair salons and some more things opening up and like easing restrictions, and there was also talk about sports in June. And I know you were expressing your frustration about the economy and having to open up and safety. And
Mhm.
I've been hearing a similar like sentiment from the Rogan squad. And I'm wondering, like, do you? Because lately, for me, like, the Newsom hate and a lot of the really like dismissive kind of commentary coming from that group of friends and podcasters and personalities has been really like troubling to me,
Mhm.
because I know a lot of people listen to them in a cult like, or a very, they always say like, yo, don't come to me for your information, don't come to me for your opinions, but the reality is people do, and I just
Yeah.
haven't really been comfortable with a lot of the shit that they've been talking about and how they've been saying it and just like dismissing stuff. And I don't think they're completely wrong, there's obviously a lot of nuance and levels, and I agree that there are considerations that need to be made, but it's just kind of like the flippant language and the not, the kind of not really,
Mhm.
the I don't know. It seems like they're doing a little bit for shock value entertainment, and it's kind of disheartening, you know. I just wanted your
Well,
thoughts
to
on all that
me,
shit.
okay, so well, I know what a lot of people hear Joe Rogan because he has the hugest platform, but you gotta know your fact. To me, I want facts. I want to know truthness. So we can go down so many rabbit holes with Governor Newsom. So there's a lot of things. He's a Democrat, and so knowing the fact like Trump is a Republican and all that. There's a lot of rumors saying that a lot of Democrats are trying to tear this economy down just to get Trump out of office. That's one thing, you know. With Gavin Newsom, and stuff. He wants to be probably one of the last states to open because you never know if some of these states like, okay, we're opening, we're going to go back to normal. Then all of a sudden, a second wave happens and the coronavirus spreads out again. And it just really, really depends. And with some of these, I have a lot of friends that they lost their jobs, they lost their business and everything. And when he said, "Oh, I'm going to extend it again," when you hear them on the news or this or whatever, they're not telling us the truth of why did you extend it. They're not giving us a reason why you're doing this for. They always show excuses when they get asked a question or hear or whatsoever. And a lot of people are in a way, we don't know. We're going to probably be fed up. We're like, fuck them. I'm not going to wear a mask no more. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. And, my opinion is, and this is the thing I hate so much because a lot of people don't understand this, and not to be disrespectful or anything, but when people get unemployment money and they spend money on stupid shit, they're not realizing that money is very limited because if it's only for 12 to 18 weeks or how long, whatever you get, what's going to happen is you never know if that unemployment money is going to stop. That unemployment money is for you to get by and pay your bills and put food on the table. And at the same time, look for a fucking job. I've been through the same situation being unemployment and I hated it. And at the same time, I don't know how it is now, but back then, when I was getting unemployment money, I would have to look for a job because they would give me a piece of paper and I would go to every job and I put an application and all that stuff and write the number and do all that. I would send it out to unemployment. Unemployment will call each and every one of those jobs and for the application to say, hey, did Steven so-and-so go over there and put an application? Yes, he did and all that, just for me to get a paycheck every week and stuff like that. So I don't know but to be honest, man, ever since this COVID, man, I've been saving a lot of money. And, with this economy right now and stuff, don't be surprised if people are saying, oh, we're going to be in a recession. No, we're going to be in a depression because the unemployment right now is going to be at 40%. And it's going to take about 2 to 3 years to get back to normal with all that stuff or whatsoever, the economy and stuff like that. And
what happens if we open up though, and a bunch of people get sick, and like the economy stops that way? Would it be better, or just as bad, or the same, or because at some point I feel like it's a catch-22, right? And this is one of the things that Sam Harris was saying. He's like, if there's no way to know, if we had not stayed home, if it would have been as bad as they said, right? Like the whole thing was like, pretend it's going to be super bad and then it won't be as bad. And that's like you overshoot it just to be safe, right? So it's hard to tell if, things are not as bad right now because we did all the shit that we did. But at the same time, if we open up, I don't know, I think for me, I'm down to open up if there's just like some crazy protocols in place. And like there's like, there's people have to wear masks and there's the distancing things continue and, businesses have to disinfect and, people have to, and like people can get kicked out for being shitty. Like there's got to be some kind of understanding, like we all kind of have to make an agreement. Like, all right, we're going to open up, but if you're being an asshole, like we're going to be able to tell you something. But I feel like people just don't want to be told shit. They don't want to be told what to do. And it's just like, they're acting like little kids, you know, like, oh, I'm gonna do it anyway. It's like,
Well, it's just that people right now are just gonna be fed up. And I just realized this right now with this extension from August now, we don't know what's going to be. You got the elections coming up, and also you got winter coming up right after August. After the Indian summer is going to be done, we're going to be in winter again. So what's going to happen?
Yeah.
More flus.
Yeah.
So and also I've been hearing there's more strains from this COVID. So what happens if this is a second wave, but this is a new virus? So it I don't know, man.
I don't know either, and
crazy.
that's the thing is like, I'm pretty sure I'm one of those people that already had it back in December, November. Like I fucking had a crazy ass sickness. I fainted, passed out. Like I felt like I had bruised my rib or some shit, like pain under the heart, all that shit. So
Yeah.
and it was I couldn't smoke. I felt like I was dying, and I don't get sick like that. Like so, I was like, Jesus Christ, this is horrible. So,
if you can't smoke, that's a problem,
right? Come on. No. So I mean, I was still smoking. Maybe that's why I passed out. But anyway, I don't know. It's more to me. It's just more about like my civic duty and trying to be, worry about the folks who are less fortunate than me. And ironically, that also includes people who need to go to work, who are less fortunate, who have to go to work. Like that also includes them. We have to be compassionate about them as well. But I don't know. We're gonna see. I think personally, my opinion, and this is kind of like what me and my friends have been kind of agreeing, is like, we locked down the first time around to make sure the hospitals didn't get packed up and that there wouldn't be fucking mass death due to insufficient supplies or whatever. And we're
but
good.
you have hospitals closing down now,
right?
Because there's no one going in.
And that was my thing. We did our part there, so now, like, we're not in that same situation, right? There has to be a difference of thought, and it's like the strategy worked, or maybe it was never going to happen, but it worked. Regardless, we didn't have crazy hospitals and mass deaths, so let's move on to the next whatever the fuck phase or the new strategy of, okay, so here's where we're at now. This is what we're going to do, and but I kind of feel like even myself, I'm guilty of it. I was super paranoid and stuck and like, no, everybody stay home. And I think a lot of people are freaked out, and I don't blame them, right? Because like you said, we know people who have died, we know people who've been sick, we know people who've recovered. So it's like, we don't have all the data, we don't have all the facts, we don't have all the numbers. The tests are not 100, so there is a lot of unknowns, and that causes fear. But at some point we have to still be rational and kind of like start pushing back and start to open up like certain businesses where people can go to work and make money and can still be safe, like there's got to be a middle ground. There's got to be a middle ground somewhere,
There has to be. With a lot of businesses are shutting down. A lot of my friends lost their bars and their businesses, and they're moving to Texas. A lot of people from Cali are moving to Texas. And all that stuff.
And this isn't the first time. Like Texas has been an option because of the rent.
I was thinking about it too. I was thinking about moving too.
I can't leave LA, dude. It's where the music's at. Like, unfortunately, this is where my shit's at.
I know. To be honest, I feel like you and I, we're spoiled because you have your artists, you have your podcast, I have my podcast. We can just choose from any guest who wants to come on your podcast or my podcast. We're spoiled.
Yeah, I got people in my DMs who like I forget, to follow up with them because I am not as organized as I should be, and there's an abundance of people who want a platform, who want an opportunity to tell their story, talk about their music video, talk about their eyelash business, whatever it is, and I try to have a space for all of them, and that's the beauty of this medium, is that it is for everybody. But at the same time, musically, if and when or whenever the things start to open up, the bars and the clubs and the studios and like all of that stuff is still centered here, as much as it would be nice to move somewhere where it's quiet. I personally, like, I've gone on vacation. I can't handle that shit. Like,
Yeah,
after
yeah.
a week of chilling, I'm like, all right, where's the party? Like, where's, where's the action? Where's the community? Where are people gathering and trying to do like active things, and just, so I can't leave Los Angeles. I don't think, like, I can't live anywhere else really.
Yeah, it's it's like I want to go out to Northern California and this and everything, but I mean, is this sometimes in a way like I'll just visit and come back, but this, like I said, this whole COVID and stuff just messed a lot of things up, and we just have to adjust to the new. We just have to adjust to it, and you know, from this, when once this is done, society is going to change. We're going to change from all this,
Well, I hope
and
so, man. And that's like, that's kind of one of the ultimate silver lining, light at the end of the tunnel type feelings that I have, is that a lot of lies and deceptions and, just like a lot of reality is really being exposed right now of how things really
oh
work,
yeah,
and who are the valuable members of society, who are the essentials, like who needs to be bailed out and saved and helped, because these are the people who continue the culture and continue the
hmm
community. Like, it's like, what does it matter if you have money if there's nowhere to go and spend your money? Like, what does it matter if you have life if there's nothing to live for, right? Like,
yeah,
crowds and nice good food and, gatherings of we're social creatures. So I hope that
hmm
there's going to be an age of prosperity, like where a lot of people did save and there is like a mass, redistribution of wealth, and maybe some businesses went down, but people who came out after are going to, try to restore these businesses or help them get back on their feet. Or, I, for one, am really looking forward to, telling business owners and venues like, hey, I'll DJ and do stuff like half rate, like let's just get the people in here. Let's just get the life flowing back again, and then we can worry about how we square up
yeah,
later. But I hope a lot of people who
yeah,
come out after this are just remember how important humanity and your fellow
yeah,
man, people, community, all that shit.
yeah. I didn't tell you this, Brian. Um, from this COVID, I learned so much about me, but I also it's kind of fucked up. It's kind of sad that you see people's true colors from when you have epidemics like this, and you go through rations and all that, where you thought a lot of your friends will be kind of cool and be there for you, then they're not there. Then they turn out to be evil and greedy and stingy and kind of cold hearted. And you can never see those people the same ever again. And that's what I learned from this COVID. It made me change, where it's like, wow, at least I still have a fucking heart, and all that. It's just sometimes in a way, it's very shocking, but it kind of hurts me to see, like, from this COVID, I lost a lot of good friends.
Really? Like, I know you and Eddie, well, were touching on that, and I think that's kind of the part where
Yeah,
I tuned out because I wanted to listen to more episodes and kind of get like a more full picture.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. That shit's true,
you
man.
really, like, you
Because
lost them, like they're gone for,
I lost
like you don't, like,
their
they're irredeemable, like you just
no,
wash your hands
they're
of
they're
them,
unre
like.
wash your hands with them. It's just that you can be hella close with friends, and when their true colors come out, and they're just very evil and very just like an asshole or a dick. Like, I wouldn't want you on my foxhole. Let's say it like that. It's like, just I can never see people the same ever since then,
I mean,
and it's true
I
color. Their personality changes because of this.
I guess, I guess I don't know if I'm lucky or privileged, or maybe I just haven't been having these interactions with folks that have
Uh huh.
exposed, because I still feel like my group became, tighter, and like we all
Yeah.
were like, yo, we got to look out for each other. Like, you need toilet paper, you need baby, you need some disinfectant wipes, like, does your mom need anything to cook with, like.
That's what I was doing. Uh, toilet paper, disinfecting cans. I was giving, I'm not going to mention certain guests or certain friends. I was giving them money because they lost their jobs, even if it's $20, $50, $100 or this. And I wasn't looking for like, hey, just give me credit or this. It's just like, just show some love, and everything. And a lot of people did me wrong. A lot of people, were just kind of like an assholes. And to me now, I took all the negativity, all that people right out of my life. So now I have an inner circle full of friends. And, even with all like you, Ryan, you're like with my friends because you're a podcaster. And that's where I keep all my family. I'm more tight knit with everyone. And I want to keep it like that. And, like I said, from this COVID, I learned so much from people's personalities, but also for me, I had to find myself more because we didn't touch on this. When you hear the Mega Man's Life, I was going through a lot of problems with my parents, and they did me wrong. And
your ex-wife left you, and you got kicked out.
I was homeless.
You kind of had you had to make like some hard choices, and you had a family and all this shit. Like and then definitely, I mean, you've come a long way, and I feel like maybe this is just another opportunity to see that as a blessing, like that you're kind of been able to like clear. Because imagine had this COVID not happened, you would have had these people in your circle when you went off to blow up and end up on Rogan, and and then now you have all these fucking snakes in your garden. Like it's like it's as painful as it is, and I'm still tripping out that it was that drastic. Like I mean, I had someone run a scam on me like for $20, but I kind of was just like, they weren't really a close friend, and I kind of just. I marked it off as like, yo, people are desperate and they must think that I'm somewhat successful if they're trying to rip me off for $20 because they don't think I need it. So I guess I guess I did my part looking popping online,
Yeah, because we didn't touch base on this earlier, but when people think like, oh, you're doing a podcast, you must be balling. It's like, no, I'm not even balling. If I was balling, I wouldn't be working at my grocery store, right now, but it takes years to get money from being a podcaster, but you have to just keep on grinding it out.
Yeah, and that's kind of what this whole situation's been about, because like I said, I joined that podcast network, and their whole thing is like, yeah, let's put out consistent shows, and advertisers will reach out to us, and whatever, if they reach out for your show, you'll get a cut, and let's just do consistency. And my music got kind of, started taking off, and I was planning tours, and I couldn't do podcasting. Like it just wasn't viable financially or time-wise, and so I kind of put it on the back burner, and they understood. Like if anything, it was better if I blew up as an artist, because then when I do my podcast, I have a bigger built-in audience, right? But that shit fell apart because of the COVID, and here we are. My podcasting is it's super consistent now, like because there's nothing else that I'm really doing. So
I've been to that situation because at the time I was with my ex, who I have a son with, she would tell me, "Why do you do podcasts? You're never gonna make it. You're never gonna make any money. Why do you fucking do it for?" Well, because I do it because it's because podcasts saved my life. It conquers my depression. I love doing it. To be honest, it keeps me out of trouble, and there's a lot of things, and it just keeps me very busy, keeps me very motivated, keeps me very hungry. And I just love meeting like you and a lot of new people down the road, and everything. And I enjoy doing it, and it conquered my depression. It conquered
your
my
stutter, your confidence, all of that, right?
Antisocial. It conquered all that stuff. So because of podcasts, there's a lot of things that come into play that changed my life on a lot of things where I see things different.
No, and I think I don't know how far back you went, but the whole podcast started just kind of on a whim. I went to a audition for a company that was coming to LA, and they actually had a studio. So my first season was all like in studio with the engineer, and
wow.
Yeah, and so like the first 20 episodes were free, and then I had, that was like my period to try to make it monetarily successful, and then after that I had to start paying. But essentially, like, the money never came through the podcast, but me doing the podcast and like being able to offer that as another service to artists I was working with, or even just that content of like, oh, we're in this legit studio with this artist who's, you know, done tours and shit. And it kind of elevated my brand. Like, cause like you said, once people see you doing podcasts, it's like, oh, this fool must be fucking balling and popping. And at the time, like, it's just, to me, it was fun. You know, I was able to like find dope people who I thought were interesting and give them an opportunity to promote themselves. And it wasn't until the
Mm-hmm.
money came involved that I, you know, it kind of changed for me, you know. And I think now that, you know, there's really nothing, there's no stakes, you know. There's like, it's kind of a free for all right now. Like, there's no pressure. Like, this is fun again, you know. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's back to what it was supposed to be, you know.
Yeah. Like, if I ever make money, in which I do down the road in this, because I'm making merch and sponsors and get more, like whatever, it just takes time. Um, I just want to have fun. That's what, like, a lot of people always say. It's just Mega Man. Just have fun doing podcasts. If you're not having fun, then if you're not having fun doing podcasts, then get the fuck out.
Uh,
You know?
so we're hitting the hour and a half mark, and so
Oh shit, we
yeah,
an hour and a half.
yeah,
Goddamn.
yeah. We're
It went
at,
by. It felt like we just talked. It felt like we just talked for like 40 minutes.
bro. I'm telling you, we're having a good time, man. That's why
It's
this
good
shit's
flow. Good
beautiful.
flow.
Yeah, yeah. But my last question, and then I'll give you, you know, the space to just do whatever shout outs and whatever you want to plug, just promos, links and stuff, is why
Uh huh.
Mega Man? And are you worried that there's gonna be
Well.
some kind of copyright or trademark shit later down the line with that, or?
I'm already working on my trademark of doing the Mega Man's podcast, so it's my podcast, and that's in the works. With a lot of people I've seen a lot of people who have Mega Man's podcast, and the last person who stopped that Mega Man's podcast, but it was like for video game, was in 2015. So to me, I'm more recent, but I'm more up to date and everything. But yeah, I'm gonna be doing a copyright, but I haven't got anything about you can't be putting that name out there or this or whatsoever. But it's I know it's like this. Mega Man's my favorite video game, and I love Mega Man. So to me, I don't care what people say. People tell me every day to change your podcast name. Why Mega Man? Well, like I said, that's my favorite video game.
Yeah, no, I mean, people always tell me to change Sneaky, but it's like, that's just who I am now, bro. Get over it.
Sneaky.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, plug
And
whatever you want to plug. It's been fucking awesome talking to you, dude. And I hope that when this is over, we could have an in-studio conversation, or even, in the next coming weeks, man. If you're feeling healthy and I'm feeling healthy and you're down to risk it, fucking,
I'm down.
yeah,
I'm ready.
We'll do some in-person shit,
Yeah, I just want to say, out of all the podcasts I've done, I have to say this episode that you and I done, Ryan, was very smooth.
Oh, well, thank
It
you.
it was very smooth, very like chill. Because I guess in a way, when you and I were podcasters, we already know the format and how it's going to be. And I just want to say thank you, and it was an honor for me to come on the Recognize and the Respect podcast, Ryan. I really appreciate it. This was really, really a fun episode. And I just want to give a shout out to all the Latino podcasts out there who are making a difference. There's just a whole bunch where I can't mention them. I would mention, but if I'm going to mention, then I have to mention a whole bunch of podcasters. But I just want to say nothing but love to all of them. And I just want to give a shout out to my boys, Gavin, Alex, my son Emiliano, my daughter Luna. Daddy loves you. You can follow me on the Mega Man's podcast on my Instagram, my personal page at Megaman6980. Other than that, I'm just going to be working. I have some people lined up, like I said, the adjustment with the Skype and the whole Zoom thing, that's going to be in the works. But I think my next episode is probably going to be Crystal and Olivia from Fat Ass Podcast, Flake Blanco, the co-host of the No Father, No Problem. And we'll do a couple solo ones here and there. And I got some people lined up, but that's about it. We're just gonna go with each episode like it's my fucking last. And I just want to say, Ryan, thank you for having me on.
Hey, man, it was a pleasure. Thank you for the compliment. You've been a great guest as well. I think
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
one of the reasons why these things will run off on time is because, you know, if you set someone up and they know how, like, and they know how to speak, they can go, you know, and like it's interesting, and like you said, it flows. And just to wrap it up on this, you know, a lot of people were saying, why do you do podcasts, and it help you through all these different types of depression and, you know, these you know, these ailments that you had, right? But also it's a skill, you know. It's like a mental, it's like a form of martial arts, but for your mind, you know, like to be quick thinking and not have, and be able to have words come up. And, you know, I have people that are like, they say like, or they're like, or they just really short answers, you know. And so it's definitely a skill that you've definitely have put time into and have a good mastery of, and as I have as well. And that's why this shit was just, it was beautiful, you know. It was beautiful, bro.
And I'm still working on my weaknesses. Like, I didn't tell this before we log off. I have another binder, and every time I do an episode, I make a list and I put the title of my weaknesses, and I have a list of stuff what I'm doing wrong. If I'm over anxious, over talking, I can't be drinking too much, or this, whatever. When you have certain guests on, you have different personalities and stuff like that. What's going to happen with a lot of things, like, let's say, for example, you have a guest on and you have all these questions, and your guest goes through the questions in 10 minutes, and your podcast is an hour and 30 minutes. What are you going to do?
That shit has happened to me before. That shit has happened to me, and I was like,
that happened to me about like 10 or 11 times, and I'm like, oh shit. And it came out really good, because a lot of people think like, oh my gosh, I don't want to repeat the same question.
Yeah. You're just trying to be quick. Like your mind is just like, all right, where do I go with this? It's like,
you got to be like this. Yeah. And ever since then, you know, doing the podcast, you know, when you have a guest on, the guest cancels, and you have a plan B, you have a plan C, you have a plan D, you know, and that comes with experience, and that's where you're going to grow from the podcast, you know, because you've been through situations and you know what to do. Hey, I've been through this stuff. Now I already know what to do when I have a situation like this, like now, you know?
Yeah. And then sometimes you just have to cut the episode short, you know. You're just like, this is not good. This is not going anywhere.
No. The episode will be short if the guy you have to push people to talk. If they don't want to talk, your episode's going to be about 30 to 40 minutes. That's where listeners be like, hey, what the fuck happened? Why is that episode short? And that's where people be like, you had a sucky guest, huh?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it happens. All right, man. Well, it was awesome talking to you.
Thank you.
We are going to put this up on the YouTube and all the podcast apps, iTunes, Spotify, and you're going to send me whatever links you want to be put in the description. I'll link up all your episodes. And, dude, go check out the Mega Man podcast. It's been a journey. Until next time, brother. Peace out.
All right. Thank you, guys. Later, guys. Love you guys. Late.
Mwah.
Yo, let's talk about recognition and respect. While I feast, the label's picking up the check. Then I leave to catch myself.